Today we're taking a deep dive into a case that really exposes the dark underbelly of a seemingly benevolent system operating right in the heart of a beloved community. We're talking about the Long Beach Seven. The material for our deep dive today comes from excerpts of a document titled The Long Beach Seven, and it lays bare what's described as a criminal enterprise, really disguised as transitional housing. Our mission today is to understand not just what happened, but how this group of individuals and entities operating under multiple names like ARG Properties, LLC, Transformation Living Homes, Joyful Wellness, Careforma, LLC, how they constructed what's described as a pipeline of human suffering, fueled by coercion, public benefits fraud, and just unchecked greed. We really want to dig into how it managed to go on for so long.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating and, well, deeply disturbing is where this happened. These abuses didn't occur in some hidden, forgotten corner. They unfolded right in Bluff Heights, Long Beach, a community long celebrated for its charm, its diversity, and, an incredibly resilient spirit. This neighborhood, with its historic homes and thriving small businesses, it really stood for dignity, safety, mutual respect. And the discovery at 359 Redondo Avenue, as the source material describes it, it just deeply violated that intrinsic trust. It talks about how the salty ocean breeze, which used to be like a promise of peaceful life, now carries the weight of fear and betrayal. It's a chilling contrast.
It really is. And imagine this. You're a dependent adult veteran. You're promised sober transitional housing, a place to rebuild your life.
The very thing they need.
Exactly. Only to be exploited by the very system meant to help you. That's the core betrayal we're exploring here. Victims genuinely believed they were entering licensed recovery housing.
They thought it was legitimate.
But what they found themselves in was, well, it's the trap. So as we piece this together, the alleged roles of these individuals, they become truly chilling. Let's dig into who these players are, the individuals, the entities at the heart of the Long Beach Seven, and understand their specific parts in this operation.
Okay. We can see a pretty clear hierarchy, like a division of labor, within this alleged scheme. First, you have Rosanna T. Domingo, described as the absentee trustee of the Domingo Family Trust. She allegedly just quietly collected profits and abdicated all oversight.
So basically let it happen.
Yeah, essentially allowed the entire criminal enterprise to flourish unchecked. Then there's Brill C. Payette. He appointed himself property manager, but had no legal credentials. He's accused of funneling cash through untraceable channels, things like money orders, off-the-books transactions, just trying to avoid detection.
Okay. And who was running things day to day?
Right. On the ground, holding direct control, were Elijah O'Kimball and Jimmy Saxton. They operated as ERG Properties, LLC. The document states they ruled the property, imposing strict control over tenants. And they did this while allegedly evading every lawful obligation, meaning operating without licenses, leases, inspections, or accountability, just completely outside the system. They enforced silence, obedience, and even unpaid labor through psychological coercion and open intimidation.
Wow. And how do they get the victims, the residents, into this situation?
The pipeline. That was allegedly Constance Gilkey through Transformation Living Homes. She's identified as the referral pipeline, exploiting things like court diversion programs, shelters, and social service systems to funnel incredibly vulnerable residents directly into this predatory environment.
So preying on people already in desperate situations.
Exactly. And then, to complete the illusion of legitimate care, you had Martha Fabiola Ferrero, operating as Joyful Wellness Care Solutions, LLC, and Carol Brown with Careforma, LLC. They held themselves out as service providers, but, and this is key, no care was ever rendered. Their role was just to complete the illusion.
Just a front.
Pretty much. And if we connect all these seemingly disparate roles, you really see how they didn't just create a fraudulent housing scheme. It was a full-fledged recovery home trafficking enterprise. Human beings, according to the source, were treated like products traded, controlled, and discarded for profit. And it's explicitly stated, which is critical to understand, this was not a sober living environment. It was a business built on human misery.
The sources paint such a harrowing picture of what it was truly like for the residents. They came seeking a lifeline, maybe their last chance at recovery.
Hope.
Yeah, hope. But found themselves deceived and then utterly trapped. It's hard to even imagine the daily reality. The conditions described are just appalling. Extreme overcrowding, danger. Rooms designed for one or two, but housing four.
4 people. Wow.
Yeah. And get this. Barred windows blocking fire escapes.
That's incredibly dangerous.
Unbelievably so.
Yeah.
And financially, it was just a ruthless siphon. Residents' meager SSI benefits, that supplemental security income, or their general relief public aid, maybe minimum wage earnings, it was all ruthlessly siphoned through untraceable money orders.
So no paper trail.
None. There were grossly inflated program fees masquerading as rent far above average, and critically, no lease agreements.
Which means no rights, really.
Exactly. No security, no stability, only control. And on top of all that, tenants were subjected to unpaid labor. Just complete systemic exploitation.
And this raises a really important question, something I've been thinking about. How did they maintain such pervasive control over individuals who were actively seeking help, seeking to rebuild their lives?
Right.
The document highlights systematic psycho-coercive tactics as a severe form of human trafficking. And that's really key to understanding this.
That's fascinating, because you'd think, well, people would just leave, right?
Right.
But clearly they couldn't. What were these specific tactics? How did that work?
Exactly. It wasn't simple. The operators began by isolating victims from support networks. They enforced a strict no-visit policy.
Cutting them off.
Completely. And this is particularly insidious because, as research shows, social support is absolutely crucial for successful recovery outcomes. They actively stripped away the very thing that helps people recover.
Wow.
They also instilled customized fear of eviction, fear of relapses, legal repercussions, the threat of fabricated parole violations, financial destitution, tailored to each person's vulnerability.
So finding their weak spots.
Precisely. And what's truly heartbreaking, they systematically eroded residents' self-worth, broke them down to compel them to surrender their financial benefits. The source material even references research, specifically Mary Main from UC Berkeley, and this concept of disorganized attachment.
Disorganized attachment, what does that mean?
It helps us understand the almost paradoxical bond victims can form with their abusers. It describes a confused emotional bonding to the source of fear and something called cognitive dissociation.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, this fright without solution creates a traumatic state that derails a person's ability to think logically and clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So even amidst the fear and the betrayal, their ability to think logically about escaping was severely impaired. It trapped them further.
So it wasn't just physical confinement, but a deep psychological trap.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And on top of that, deception was a core tool. They were lying to everyone.
Absolutely. The documents show they duped everyone, even the mayor, claiming to offer things like job training, skills workshops, rehabilitation programs, all of which the source says were pure fiction.
Just lied.
Total lies. And these lies, the investigation reveals, were tools used to secure placements, public trust, and funding, crucial for keeping the whole scheme going.
And if anyone pushed back?
Well, when tenants did question conditions or maybe rent increases, the rules changed overnight. Just like that. Lot codes were suddenly disabled, belongings tossed out or held hostage.
Just immediate retaliation.
Exactly. And these, as the source points out, are classic indicators of human trafficking. This wasn't just opportunism, it was a highly calculated system of control.
Given everything we've heard about the systematic control, the psychological manipulation, the financial side of this must have been equally calculated. How exactly did they structure their operation to, well, extract such illicit profit?
Oh, it's crystal clear this was a deliberate and calculated scheme from a financial perspective, too.
Absolutely.
First off, they operated without a business license.
No license, none.
Which the source indicates was an intentional move. They wanted to evade tax responsibilities and regulatory oversight. This basically created a massive regulatory blind spot for years, making them almost invisible to authorities. And the money itself was carefully concealed, funneled through hidden transactions and off-the-book money orders and cash payments, all designed to ensure illicit profits remained untraceable.
So hard to follow the money.
Very hard. Furthermore, fraudulent deductions and falsified claims further deepened the deception. And by sidestepping every legal requirement, they not only avoided accountability, but perhaps more critically, they reinforced their grip on the tenants, knowing victims had little recourse without any official documentation or paper trail.
It wasn't just negligence then.
No, not at all. It was a deeply ingrained strategy, a calculated scheme.
But despite the years this alleged enterprise operated with what's described as de facto immunity, it sounds like the silence protecting this network is finally being broken. It feels like a turning point.
It does.
The documentation reveals that one brave tenant, acting for every person exploited, silenced, and discarded by this system. They will file a federal lawsuit against the Long Beach 7. That's a monumental step.
It really is. And this legal action, it's being filed under some very serious statutes. We're talking about the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. That's RICU.
Okay, cool. Wow.
Yeah. Also, the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and both state and federal laws that protect the rights of disabled and dependent adults. They're throwing the book at them, essentially.
Just serious charges.
Very serious. And for the first time, those who allegedly built this empire of abuse behind closed doors, they will be named, exposed, and held to account in a court of law. The source says the summonses are being prepared. Service is coming, so is justice.
We've explored how a supposed sanctuary became, well, a site of profound exploitation, right in the heart of a community built on trust. It's deeply disturbing.
Yeah, it really is. And this deep dive, it really leaves us with a critical question, something for you, the listener, to consider. How can communities, how can oversight bodies get better at identifying and intervening in these insidious forms of exploitation, especially when they're so cleverly disguised as help or care?
Right, when they look like the good guys.
Exactly. And what systemic changes are truly needed to prevent these kinds of abuses from flourishing unchecked in the future?
We hope this deep dive has given you a clear understanding of this complex and frankly disturbing situation, and maybe something powerful to think about long after our conversation ends.